Hello, and welcome to Framingham Now. I'm Jack Patrick Lewis, State Representative for the 7th Middlesex District, which includes the entire town of Ashland, most of South Framingham, and just a little bit of North Framingham. Because we're going to be talking about precincts and districts today, in Framingham I represent folks who live in precincts 8, 13, 14, 16, 17, and 18 on Beacon Hill. On this program, we talk with elected officials, community leaders, and area activists about the current political landscape in Framingham and the future of the town that many of us call home. We have an election around the corner, so I'm interviewing all the candidates running for City Council. Today, I have the candidates running for City Councilor in District 8, which is Precinct 15 and 18. On our show today, we have Judy Grove and Stephen Croce. Judy, thank you so much for being our guest today. I'm so grateful that you were able to take the time to come on the show. And I know you're somebody that's very well known in town, especially in your community. But as we jump right into our conversation, there are probably one or two people at home watching that have not met you yet. Mm-hmm. And so for those people, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running.
Well, a lot of people do know me, but one thing I thought about recently that they don't know is that I've been an activist since 1967, when my husband and I moved to Berkeley, California during the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. So we lived in a community where we had army tanks in the streets, tear gas, identity searches. We were on marches in People's Park. Our son was with us in a stroller. So it began then. We moved there from Cambridge, where not very much was happening. Mm-hmm. The West Coast always seems to be ahead of the curve. In addition to the war protests, I taught in a school with minority students. I was a science teacher. I had always been in private schools. I knew nothing about public schools. I was the new teacher, and what they do to the new teacher is they give you the hardest classes, the kids that they don't want to deal with. My class was all minority kids, a science class, 9th grade. They couldn't read at a 5th grade level. I was truly innocent and shocked by it. I went to the principal, I went to the other teachers, and they said my job was just to get them promoted. They didn't care that they weren't learning. So that was the beginning of my activism for children. We then moved off to Duluth, Minnesota. We had 2 children, one born in Iceland, where we lived for a year. And at that time, I became a foster parent to children who were abused and neglected by their parents. And I felt the foster care system wasn't working. The children shouldn't have been out of their homes. They either had to place them in a good home, have them adopted, or help the parents to figure out their problems. So I went to court hearings. I spoke up. I wrote a newsletter. I was president of the Foster Parent Association. We moved then to Virginia, which was a quiet place where not much of anything was going on, the University VPI. Mm-hmm. And there I did chair the United Way for the community. We moved back then to Framingham, where my husband got a job at Framingham State. And because we believed in environmental sustainability, we wanted to live in Framingham so he could walk to the college, which is 3 miles away. And
it's a long walk.
Yes, especially for my husband, who's handicapped. So I then got involved with town meeting. And the reason I got involved was I was complaining at a meeting about the downtown, about closing the Hess gas station, leaving it vacant, leaving it all broken up. And a person there, a town meeting member, physically took my arm, walked me to the clerk's office and said, you have to sign up to be town meeting. And very quickly, I got into the issues that have mattered to me. My issue is environmental justice. For those who don't understand it, environmental justice means that all people are entitled to be free of environmental pollution, to live in a clean and healthy environment. And what I came to learn in Framingham, as well as other areas, is that the burden of environmental pollution is on people of color and low-income communities. I then decided I would present an article at town meeting with Herb Chazen, who founded Hoops and Homework. I was involved for 1 month, and Herb convinced me to present an article for better recreation down in the Pelham apartment area. So we went down there, I met people, and I presented it. That night, while we were speaking to 5 different articles, people yelled at us. They said, if those people want these things, why don't they get jobs? Why don't they have fewer children? It was the epitome of bigotry. So we all failed. Not one article passed. As I walked back to my seat, a man probably in his 30s stopped me and he said, how would you like me to come to your house and build a basketball court in your yard? So I said, I live at 119 Cedar Street, you can come tomorrow. Then I went to Mary Dennison Park to find out why the children didn't have a decent park. And when I talked to them, they said they didn't go there because there was nothing there for them. Turned out there were 3 major baseball fields permitted to companies in Framingham in the area. They were making money for the Parks Department. There was a tot lot with 2 baby swings and a basketball court and nothing else. The children told me in the summer they stayed inside, or they stayed late in school during the school year because there was nothing to do. So I started a petition, 800 signatures, found out the kids thought they were getting a skate park and it never got built. That became the major part of what I learned. I met James McCarthy. James was 9 years old when he was on a committee with Margot Dean, who wonderful person who recently passed. There was a federal grant to see if they could help teenagers to stay out of trouble, and the kids said a skate park would be a place they could meet, they could be athletes, they didn't need uniforms, they didn't need parents to drive them. So they brought it to town meeting in 2002 for $182,000, and it failed. The parents got together, the fathers, and they were given a tennis court between Keefe Tech and Loring Arena. And he said, we'll fix it up. We'll paint the fence, we'll pave it, we got free platforms. It didn't get built. It didn't make sense. I was on Ways and Means Committee at this point, and I knew how to look things up. I have a science background, and I know how to do research. I also have taken courses in computer science. So I looked the minutes up, and I went backwards in time to 2005. The kids at this point had raised $15,000. They needed 20. They were ready to go. They had their cards ready. It didn't get built. I went back further. It turned out that that piece of land was desired by the Parks Department. They were building Bowditch Field and they wanted their maintenance building somewhere else. They decommissioned it through the state, probably helped by our representative who didn't know any better, and it became their land and they built the buildings on it. So then I said, then we'll build it at Mary Dennison Park. I kept going and they said, well, it might be polluted. Is it polluted? It took about a year. They kept stalling me, and finally it came out that the park was polluted, and the records I read said they knew in 1990 when they put in the basketball court. They learned that again in 2000 when they put in the swings. They were supposed to report it to the state, and it should have been cleaned up, and they didn't report it. So when I got involved, I pushed it, and they then said, okay, we had a community meeting. At the community meeting, a little girl got up and said, I play at that park. I'm really worried that I'm in danger. And they said, it's okay, dear, just don't eat the dirt. They said that to this child. So a group of activists said, close it down till we know more. Well, they refused. That was May of 2014. In September, when they did further testing, they found out that the tot lot was loaded with lead. They closed it in 2 hours. And then they started the cleanup. So now I needed another place for a skate park. So I started a group called Framingham Skate Park Committee. James McCarthy was back in action. I went to a board meeting of the Parks Department with 6 kids who had been these kids, who are now grown up, 18, 20, 22. We had our petition with 800 signatures. We walked into the meeting. The director pointed to me and said, Mrs. Grove, you have 3 minutes. I'm sure you have better things to do. And you kids are not speaking. They were not allowed to speak. So I let James have 1 minute of my time. So we left. We started the committee. We met on Farm Pond and joked about having a skate park there. And finally, they wouldn't bring it up. So I brought it as a citizen's petition to town meeting. Nobody would sponsor it for me. And I made sure I answered the questions. It's not dangerous like football. It's 7th in terms of those. The highest is basketball, ankle injuries, shoulder injuries. It's not a place where kids use drugs. You don't skateboard if you're on drugs. And I talked about the other benefits. It passed 125 to 5.
Wow.
Then we had a committee. We had to pick a location, ended up on Farm Pond. So that was really exciting for us. And I go there every day and look at it. And last night I was speaking at the community church And James McCarthy's mother was there. I had never met her.
I think it's your story, ties right back to where it began, that you're committed to this town. The skate park is a perfect example, as people who know you know that you have many projects, many commitments, and they're all interconnected. And when I drive by that area as well, to know that it's been people like you, and you in particular, that have really seen that project through. You have never forgotten those original kids from 2003, you said?
2002.
2002.
Yeah.
They're now a little older, hopefully maybe 10 years away from having kids themselves, so that'll be of an age to be exploring it. But it's clear to people who know you that you have a deep roots in your community, and the way you talk about environmental justice, environmental racism, that these things happen in communities like they do. And I'm just so grateful, aside from this race, that there are people like you out there not afraid to talk about serious issues that are happening. You're running to be the district representative for a part of town that historically has not had the same number of folks representing it, either on town meeting or in the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, that's a topic I'd like to talk about. Another thing that became important to me, I was chair of Precinct 15 off the bat because the precinct, there were only 6 people involved. They weren't committed. And then the other 3, 17, 16, 18, they maybe had 5 people. So whenever we came to town meeting, we lost our votes. We didn't have the numbers. So I recruited people, and I got my precinct up to 12.
Wow.
They didn't always come. I helped. Then I decided the others needed help, so I had all the precinct meetings at my house, all 4 precincts. And some people got very, very active from the different precincts. So all the work that I've done has involved the 4 precincts, and particularly 18, we've been like one precinct. So this combination of 15 and 18 is really very appropriate and perfect for me. So then I thought about the fact that I wanted to be on the Parks Commission. I was dealing with Mary Dennison in the skate park. It made sense to me. I applied about a year later, and I got a phone call that I would not get 1 vote. There were 2 openings.
Oh.
They wouldn't give me 1 vote. I mean, this is what goes on in this town. So I didn't get on it. And 2 years later, when we were building the skate park, I applied. And again, I didn't get on it. And one of the members of the Board of Selectmen wrote an email to somebody who's a friend of mine, and it was forwarded to me. And it said, I will never appoint Judy Grove to a board after what she did to the Parks Department. So you speak up, and there's going to be response back. So then I said, well, if I can't get on that board, how many people on the South Side are on any of these boards, in addition to not being represented in town meeting? So I took a map of Framingham. I had visited every part of Framingham when Mary Dennison existed, because I wanted to see what other neighborhoods had. Is it fair what these kids don't have? So I pinpointed everybody on 55 people who were appointed by town meeting moderator. 2 of them were below Route 135. So the fact that I'm applying and qualified and I didn't get on, it's all politics. So I became a big advocate for the city. I saw it as the only way that we could have representation on the south side of Framingham. And really, the south side is below 135. It's very different from the south Framingham. Yes. That's a different neighborhood. And so when we became a city, now we will have a district. Everybody will have a district, and everyone will have a school committee member. That was the other thing I found out. 100% of the Board of Selectmen and the school committee lived above Route 9. Most of them above even the Pike. And yet 60% of our kids live below Route 9. So nothing's going to change or get better with that. Now the big challenge is that we get the right people elected.
Unfortunately, our time has gone by so quickly. It's amazing when you get talking about things that people are so passionate about. So, folks who are listening at home, Judy Grove, who's running to be the city councilor for District 8, which is precincts 15 and 18. Just a public service announcement. If you were in precinct 15 yesterday, precinct 18 yesterday, you still have a precinct. That's still your precinct. You still vote in the same place you voted last year, I believe St. Tarcisius, but you now are also in District 8. And so you are running to be the advocate and the representative to the newly formed city for the folks that live in precinct 15 and 18, now newly formed District 8. Judy, I'm so grateful that you have committed yourself to this town, that you're running. I wish you the best of luck over these next couple of weeks. And for those watching at home, I hope you'll stay tuned as we get to know Stephen Croce here in just a few moments. Thank you.